All right, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We are visiting Udell Botanical Gardens in Crestwood, a wonderful, magical place if you've never been. And today we have volunteer Jacqueline, who is going to be showing us some of their wonderful pollinator plants. Take it away, Jacqueline.
Good morning. Hi, welcome. I'm Jacqueline McGrail, and I've been volunteering at Udell Botanical Gardens for 16 years now. And today we're starting out in the Overlook Garden, and we're going to talk about butterfly plants with a real focus on the native plants. My mantra for gardening is nature, natives nurture nature. So try to always use as many native plants in your garden as you can. We'll start out with the purple cone flowers, which, as you can see, you might call that pink, but they're purple because it is pink. They also come in white, and they come in some other colors. Or cultivars now. They have breeding cultivars. But any flower that has nectar and pollen. Okay, let's move down the beds. These beds are beautiful. This garden went in I think 2006. I think it was 2006. This garden went in.
Jacqueline, I'm sorry, I think we're losing you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, but we haven't heard you since coneflowers.
Okay, because we were just walking.
Okay.
Okay, so this is one of the non-native plants that is a real butterfly magnet. It's catmint. It's not catnip, it's catmint. And it blooms repeatedly, especially if you deadhead it, and the butterflies and the bees love it. We won't see a lot of butterflies out today, first because it's cloudy, and second because it's still fairly early in butterfly season. The height of butterfly populations are July, August, and September. So now we'll move down to the giant coneflowers. This is Rudbeckia maxima. You'll see it has very pretty blue-green leaves. And you can see that it's related to Black-Eyed Susan. And it has that same structure of the cone, which is where all the nectar and pollen is, and the ray petals that tell the pollinators, come here, come here. Now we'll move down to the next plant. And this is Monarda. It's bee balm. It comes in different colors, from palest purple that's almost white to dark purple, blue, and this red violet, and some fire engine red as well. And each of these little structures is a little flower in the head that's full of nectar and pollen. For the butterflies and the bees and the hummingbirds love this one as well. Okay, we're going to move down the bed. And this is Coreopsis. There are a lot of Coreopsis. This is one of the threadleaf Coreopsis. The sign says it's moonbeam, but it's not. Moonbeam is a very pale one. This one is Zagreb, or one of the golden yellow ones. Also long blooming, especially if you go and snip off the spent flowers, it will keep reblooming for a long period of time. There are some other Coreopsis with larger flowers and different leaves that will bloom earlier in the year. One is lance leaf Coreopsis, and these will all be on the list that I compiled for you and which you will get as a supplement to this program. Okay. A lot of our butterfly plants have not really bloomed yet, because they evolve together with the butterflies so that they bloom when the butterfly populations are the highest. And that includes Joe Pye weed. This is one of the shorter varieties. The taller varieties can be 7 feet tall, but there are shorter varieties as well. And some of them have the purple stems and some have regular green stems. As we're coming around, here's a solid aster related to the asters. Again, it hasn't bloomed yet. It will bloom in another few weeks. Here, if you look into the meadow, you see some of the cone flowers, the purple cone flowers, and that one is called a gray-headed cone flower. This is fleabane daisy. There are spring and summer varieties. They're also good. Although they're a little weedy, they like to just sow themselves around. Shrubs are also very important for a butterfly garden. And in the distance here, you can see this is an elderberry shrub, an American elderberry. And it is one of the best pollinator shrubs that you can have. It also will take wet soils. If you have soils that are rather wet and a lot of things won't grow there, elderberry is an excellent choice. Of course, there are some butterflies out earlier in the year, and so we need some spring blooming native plants as well. This is penstemon, also called beard tongue, and this bloomed in the spring, and this is an excellent butterfly and pollinator plant. More coreopsis. Then we have asters. Asters, you can see this big patch of asters. Asters are one of the real mainstays of any butterfly garden because late in the season, the butterflies need sources of nutrition, and these are nice and late blooming, and a lot of the asters will bloom up until frost, making sure that the butterflies have plenty of food before they go dormant or they migrate. Here's some more of the catmint. These are cone flowers, not quite the black-eyed Susan, but a close relative that will have the brown center and the yellow rays. This one is the sweet cone flower. All the rudbeckias are excellent plants for butterflies. Here's a native cultivar of the staghorn sumac in foliage. That's an interesting plant. Sumacs are very valuable for wildlife, for birds, as well as for the insects. This lovely fern-like, willow-like plant that looks like a shrub, but it's actually a perennial. This is one of the blue stars. There are several of them, Amsonia. They have little blue flowers in the spring, so they're a source of spring nectar for the butterflies. And they grow they go die to the ground in the winter, but in the fall, before they go dormant, the foliage turns a beautiful yellow color. One of the different and
Sorry, Jacqueline, I think we're losing you again.
That a native, but there's selection.
If you can hear me, your video is frozen right now. We can sort of hear you coming in and out. Oh, we lost her. Well, let's give her just a moment here to come back. I've been taking some notes myself. These are these are really interesting plants. I have some Amsonia in my front yard that it has finished blooming because it was one of those early springs. And it is, unfortunately, it got a little bit blown around in the last windstorm we had. That's one thing you have to watch out for. I think at Udell, theirs are much better shielded.
Are you back up, Lauren?
Yes, we can see you again.
Okay.
Okay.
We flip this back around for Jacqueline.
Okay, here's another one of the coneflowers that's a recent color development. This one's called Mellow Yellow. And if you look over there, you can see the pink yarrow. And these geraniums, I want to say a word about, these little purple are the Roseanne, and it is of imported species, but there's a native geranium that looks very much like that, except it has flowers, and that's the native wild geranium. And that will be on your plant list as well. Okay, now we're going to head up to and go toward the family garden. And
We'll just
there's some plants along the way.
do a little show and tell on the walk.
It's the St. John's wort. This is Hypericum prolificum blue velvet, and they bloom in the summer and over quite a long period of time. There are several species, and they are butterfly and bee friendly. They're also very pretty shrubs. If you haven't been to Udell, I really encourage you to come and visit. It's just an absolutely beautiful garden. It has something for everyone. And the buildings are beautiful, the stone buildings.
We're walking through the Holly Alley here. So if you've seen any pictures of Udell of weddings or
This is
graduations, this is the walk that everybody does through the Holly Alley. And then we've got the secret garden on the side.
let's go to the bottle brush buckeye.
Okay. This, if you've been here before, here's the event lawn. If you're kind of doing a walking in the steps, if you've visited before, we're going to the bottle brush buckeye.
This is a wonderful native shrub. This one is very tall, but usually when you see them, they're maybe 6 or 7 feet tall. I was just at someone's house that had a beautiful one that was just about 5 or 6 feet tall. And I asked her how long it had been there, and it turns out it had been there for 25 years. So this is an exceptionally tall one. But these flowers are real magnets for butterflies and bees. So if you have space for a little bit larger shrub, I highly recommend the bottle brush buckeye. Okay, now we're going to move towards the family garden. And the family garden is behind this mid 1800s log cabin. That's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of history. If you look at my list, I have annuals as well as perennials. And this is Gomphrena, also called Globe Amaranth. It comes in the purples and the white and the pink. Very good pollinator plant. And this is called the family garden. And it has a beautiful patch of butterfly milkweed. This is the orange milkweed that you see by the side of the road. And you see it is absolutely swarming with honeybees and bumblebees and the little small native bees that you usually don't even notice, but they're there. We have hundreds of species of native bees. That's butterfly milkweed. That's a #1 plant. And of course, the milkweeds are also the host plant for the monarch butterflies, because butterflies need not just nectar for food for the adults, but they also need a plant where their caterpillars can develop. And that's called a host plant. So the milkweeds are the host plant for monarch butterflies. Here's common milkweed. It's really finished blooming. The blooms are drying up, but you see the seed pods forming, and you know they have the little silky seeds that fly through the air when they're released. The seed pods will get about that big. You can grow this in your garden. I grow it in my garden, but it does tend to spread a lot. So you have to be willing to set some limits to it. Then we have marigolds. And there are a lot of marigolds over here. More of the Gomphrena. Marigolds.
So we have the family garden resource for our children's programming. So the horticultural staff plant these so that we can use them for programming to get the kids excited about their gardening activities.
Okay, and now we will head back over to the castle.
Backside of this is the backside of the
bottle brush
brush
buckeye.
buckeye. So you can get a good view of that.
And on
Gorgeous
a
plant.
sunny, warm day, this will be full of swallowtail butterflies. There'll be the tiger swallowtail, the zebra swallowtail, the black swallowtail, monarchs. You'll see monarchs on it later in the season. It's very much a butterfly magnet. Let's walk down this way so they can see the annual event lawn. Hostas, butterflies don't generally have a long enough tongue to feed on hostas, but the hummingbirds love the hosta flowers. These New Guinea impatiens, the butterflies can feed on. If the coleus are allowed to go to flower, a lot of people cut the flowers off, but that also becomes a flower that the butterflies can feed on.
Let's go through. Yes. We'll do a quick scan of the walled garden here. So you can see it as we're walking through.
So our last stop will be talking about butterfly bush. There are concerns about butterfly bush because people love to plant it and the butterflies do love the nectar, but there are issues of it not being a host plant and also of it having invasive potential. There are places in the country where it has spread itself into the wild and become an invasive plant. There are a number, because of that problem, the plant breeders have developed a number of series of the butterfly bushes that are sterile, so they don't set seed and they don't spread into the wild. And they are listed on my list of recommended plants because I think that's an important issue that people need to be aware of. You think, oh, butterfly bush, it's called butterfly right in the name. It's the perfect thing. But if you plant it instead of native shrubs that will provide nectar, but they also will provide a host plant for the caterpillars, because you can't have adult caterpillars, or you can't have adult butterflies if you don't have caterpillars. So that's an important thing that people have to keep in mind. And I think that's about it. We have other beautiful New Guinean patients in a bright orange around the castle in a beautiful planting. And do you want questions now or do you want to wait until the end?
Let's do questions at the end and all three of us can sort of be a panel.
Okay.
Sounds great.
So thank you so much for that grand tour.
Thank
So many
you.
plants. I took notes myself. I know what I'm going to go plant next.
Awesome. And we'll get you that list, Lawrence, for your follow-up to your
Okay,
participant.
thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
anybody who would like a list, if I don't already have your email, if you didn't get an email directly from me this morning, then put it in the chat or send an email to Lauren, LAUREN .state, STATE @uky.edu, and I will get that to you. Okay, I am bringing up my presentation now. So bear with me one moment. Okay, can everyone see a PowerPoint? Give me a little wave. Okay, great. So this is just going to be a short presentation to show you some pictures of some of our native butterflies and give you some tips on how you can support them in your yard. This list of 26 common species was identified by University of Kentucky Horticulture, and I'm going to highlight 13 of them. I'd also like to note that Butterflies and Moths of North America has identified 82 species in Oldham County. So these are just the most common ones, but you may see others. First, we'll look at the black swallowtail. This is a little bit of a bigger butterfly. Our swallowtails tend to be our larger ones, and they call them that because of the little tail on the hind wings there. They are crazy about dill, both the caterpillar and the butterfly. If you plant dill, the black swallowtails will come. And something that is interesting about this species is that they overwinter in a chrysalis. So whatever host plants the caterpillars were hanging out on, they will form their cocoon there and stay there over winter and then come out in the spring as butterflies. Next is the eastern comma, and he's called a comma because of a little white comma on the underside of the wing, if you can see it there. And he's just a little guy, just about 1.33 to 2.5 inches long. You'll find the caterpillars in our trees, our elm trees, and also in some of the nettles. And you won't find those caterpillars unless you're looking at night. A lot of caterpillars, more likely you will find them at night rather than during the day. And the eastern comma overwinters as adults. Some of them here, even in our cold winter. Most of them tend to go south though. The eastern tiger swallowtail is our largest native butterfly, at least in my presentation, up to 6.5 inches long. You'll find the caterpillars on trees such as ash, birch, cottonwood, hornbeam, pawpaw. They love all our native trees. They overwinter as a chrysalis. The great spangled fritillary, I thought was a fantastic name. These orange fellows hibernate as newly hatched caterpillars. They will hang out on their host plants among the black-eyed Susan, butterfly weed, milkweed, Joe Pye weed, some of those that we saw in the tour at Udell. The caterpillars will hang out in the litter from those plants, and they will wait until spring and the new leaves come out, and that's when they start feeding. Now, monarch, most people know a little bit about our monarch. They're endangered. They are in fewer numbers every year. So I won't go too into depth on them since most people do already know a little bit, but I'd like to recommend if you could catch a presentation by Octavia Cathcart, the director of Creasy Mayhen Nature Preserve here in Goshen, Oldham County. She has a fantastic presentation on the monarchs. She has gone down and visited their overwintering sites in Mexico a number of times. But if you want monarchs in your yard, you need to plant different kinds of milkweed. This is the painted lady. Their caterpillars will eat just about anything. Some of the favorites are hollyhock, legumes, mallow, and thistles. The adults also will feed on just about anything as long as it's a composite flower, which means not one big guy, but a bunch of little guys. And their butterflies tend to only feed on flowers that are about 3 to 6 feet off the ground, which is interesting. And they migrate and they go south as butterflies and winter there. Pipevine swallowtail. I thought this was a really interesting looking caterpillar. This can be one of our larger butterflies, up to 5 inches in wingspan. And all their caterpillars will be on pipevine plants, hence the name pipeline swallowtail. They overwinter as a chrysalis. Question mark, related to the eastern comma. This guy has a little question mark on the underside of his wing. If you can see in the top right picture there, there's a tiny little white question mark. And they're a big fan of trees. You'll find their caterpillars mostly in elms and also in nettles. They overwinter sometimes as adults up here in our cold, or they will migrate south. The red admiral is a little bit of a smaller butterfly. Your caterpillars will be found in elms and nettles. They migrate south and overwinter as butterflies, adult butterflies. The red spotted purple is ironically often blue, and you will find their caterpillars on the leaves of apple, aspen, cottonwood trees, poplars, birches, hawthorns, and hornbeams. They like a number of different trees. Something interesting about this guy is the butterfly mimics the pipevine swallowtail, which is poisonous. And then their caterpillars look a little bit like bird droppings. So this guy tries to be in disguise, whether he's a young caterpillar or an adult butterfly. And they hibernate also as caterpillars over the winter. The spicebush swallowtail. They enjoy prickly ash, spicebush, hence the name, sweet bay, and tulip trees. Those are their host plants. The caterpillars tend to feed at night, and they overwinter as a chrysalis. Viceroy, this is our state butterfly. They mimic the monarch butterfly, but you can identify them by a black V across the hind set of wings there. V for Viceroy. Their caterpillars feed at night, and they also overwinter as caterpillars inside curled leaves. They will curl some of those leaves themselves and form a little hideout that will keep them safe during the winter. And if you want them in your yard, you probably want some trees like willows, poplars, cottonwood, aspen, apple, plum, and wild cherry. The zebra swallowtail. Host plants include hornbeam, pawpaw, spicebush, and tulip tree. They hibernate as caterpillars on the underside of these plants' leaves. So if you want to see butterflies, these are some of the top pollinator plants for our area. I pulled these numbers from the, sorry, what is it called? It's the Native Plant Finder, and I will give you a link to that website if you're interested. It helps you find native plants according to your zip code, and they also give you numbers of species that have been observed in your area. So that's where these numbers come from. As you can tell, the top is oak, which most people don't think of when they think butterflies, but caterpillars just love oak trees. And there is a book that recently came out called The Nature of Oaks by Doug Tallamy, which is supposed to be a really good read. I haven't gotten into my copy yet, but it tells you a lot about oaks and their relationship with pollinators, among other natural relationships that they have. And I would like to note also that 9 of the butterflies highlighted in this presentation will visit milkweed. So that's a good one to plant if you're trying to get butterflies. Some last tips I'll leave you. 1, if you can, leave your garden messy. Caterpillars will form their cocoons in leaf litter and overwinter there often. So if you clean up the garden before they've made it through the winter and into the spring, then you might be throwing away the caterpillars that grow up to be butterflies. 2, know how to safely use your chemical controls and only use them as a last resort. I do have Roundup myself. It's reserved for poison ivy. I try not to use it otherwise, but that stuff, that's the only way I can get rid of it. And make sure you read the whole label so you know what temperatures it works best in, because if it's say too cold and you spray, then it won't be very effective and you'll just have wasted that expensive pesticide. Native plants have adapted to our area, so you want to plant as many natives as possible. We saw a lot of natives in the Udell Garden Tour. Often you'll find that they're easier to grow too, and they support far more native species than any of our introduced species. Butterflies can't see very well, so you want to cluster your plantings. Don't plant just one cardinal flower, plant a bunch of cardinal flowers. And you want to diversify your plantings as well. UK has actually conducted some research and found that milkweed only gardens attract wasps that then eat all of the caterpillars, and you don't end up with any monarchs from those gardens. Support the entire life cycle to encourage butterflies in your yard. If you have lots of nectar-rich plants, that's great. But if you don't have any host plants, then you won't have any caterpillars in your area. And they don't travel very far. They stay close to home. And lastly, lawn is dead space. It really doesn't support any life for pollinators or really a lot of our native species. So if you can at all, reduce your lawn. If you can leave any weeds in your yard mixed in, like my yard is probably mostly weeds. I'm personally okay with anything out there as long as it's green. So I've got all kinds of violets and various mints and other things that people consider weedy, but to me it's green, that's fine. And they all have blooms throughout the season, so it's helping to support a little bit more life than just a flat lawn would. So that is the end of my presentation. There are some websites here that I got a lot of information from. The Native Plant Finder is listed on there as well. You can actually make an account on the Native Plant Finder and you can go through, you can tag your favorite pollinator species and native plants, and it gives you a little bit of information on them. And then one other thing I'd like to show you. UDEL has a number of pollinator workshops coming up. If you have any questions about them, you can contact UDEL. Susan Lancaster, her email is down, sorry, Susan Lucas, her email is down there, and she is on today helping with the tour. And that's their phone number as well. So if you have any other interest in pollinators, you'll want to look into these workshops. Some of them are virtual and some are in person. And I will leave this up and open us up to questions. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, you may, or you can type it in the chat if you're more comfortable with that.
Well, I can say, Lauren, thank you so much for sharing the pollinator workshops we have coming up. And you're right, we have a mix of in-person. That the one that was the highest seller last year was that hand-raising monarchs, where I go out with Andrea Matz and we collect monarch eggs and give you the pop up the egg, the container, the milkweed even, and instructions and walk you through. It's a pretty amazing process to watch it, the little egg hatch and the caterpillar and the chrysalis, and then to get to release it. It's an amazing experience. And the great thing about those virtual programs is a family can do it together that way. So can kind of gather around their device or desktop and watch it together. The insect identification is with Sadie, our garden and arboretum manager. So she's going to do sort of an overview, your style, sort of like a PowerPoint overview, and then participants are going to go out in the gardens and look for the bugs, and that includes field guides and Hamlins, and then our pollinator meadow in August should just be at its glory for this season, and that's always fun to take those walks with the apprentices and learn from them about those best native plants to support the pollinators. So we've got a good variety of in-person, longer sessions, virtual for the family. So we hope there's a little something for everybody for their next exploration of pollinators.
And I don't think we've mentioned this week is National Pollinator Week.
Yes, right. That's why we're doing this, because I forgot about that too. We want to honor the pollinators. Mm-hmm. And this is my email on there and my phone number. That's the direct line to UDEL, but I'm happy to answer any questions about any of our programs. We just highlighted the pollinators for today's topic, but we have a whole slate of gardening related workshops all summer long.
Did anyone have any questions about butterflies, pollinators in general, gardening?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, Pat.
Oh, because I still have the big sign up on UDEL Botanical Gardens. Is that, I thought maybe the ladies would come back, but is that right?
I can turn that back off. I was just leaving it up for a couple of
Okay.
minutes if anyone wanted to make a note.
Well, no, I just have a couple of comments. Lauren, I had no idea that we had that many species of butterflies. I was amazed at that. And the other comment is, the caterpillars to me are beautiful. They're just as beautiful in their way as the butterflies. And some of them are so cute with those little pointy things across their back.
Yes.
They're real sweet. And the butterflies are absolutely mind-boggling in how beautiful they are. And that was a real eye opener to me. And I knew pretty much about the pollinators. I've studied quite a bit on them, but I really appreciate this workshop, Lauren. You've done a beautiful job.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comment. And I agree, the caterpillars are just adorable.
Would you explain a little bit more how the chrysalis is formed? What is it made up?
It is a sort of silk sometimes. It hardens. I don't know, Susan and Jacqueline, do you know a little bit more about cocoons?
I consider them part of nature's magic. And the transformation of when a caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, they actually liquefy. The caterpillar turns to a liquid and then is reconstituted somehow through Mother Nature magic as a butterfly. It's chemistry.
Well, what is it made up? Is it secreted from?
Yes,
The
it's
butterfly?
secreted. Yes, it's secreted by the caterpillar.
And then it just surrounds it completely and solidifies?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Are they different colors?
yes.
Does it-
Most of them are rather inconspicuous. The monarch that has that beautiful green chrysalis is an exception. Most of them are brown and you wouldn't even really notice them. That's why it's important to leave your leaves in your garden beds and let them become your mulch.
Well, are they connected to branches like decayed?
Sometimes they are, and sometimes they're just loose in the leaves, in the fallen leaves, or in the very top layer of soil. So anytime you rake off your leaves, you're removing all those chrysalises.
You're kidding.
No, I kid you not.
You mean I'm killing all little butterflies when I break those leaves?
Yes.
Oh, I can't believe it. Okay, that's new to me too.
The other thing I want to say about caterpillars is you have to be careful not to touch caterpillars. A lot of them have stinging cells, those pointy parts on their body. Not all of them, but a fair number of caterpillars of both butterflies and moths have stinging cells. So it's best not to touch them.
Okay. And Lauren, you're going to be sending us a lot of, through the email, some of all this information that you've given us today.
Yep, we will be sending additional information, including
All right.
plant lists.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's like, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I had no idea there was so many different kinds and all the different, it's just amazing the way nature works.
It
So,
is, it's
thank you.
incredible.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad I was able to be a part of it.
Well, me
You're
too.
very welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Lauren. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Jane. I'm glad. I think what is labeled Sheila is actually Linda, and she might have a couple of homemakers with her. If you have any questions from them, feel free to unmute and let us know.
Now, I do have a homemaker with me. This is Linda. I do have a homemaker with me, and we've thoroughly enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
What do you have coming up? You got another program, Lauren?
I don't have another program coming up. This might be my last one.
Oh, I don't like to hear that.
Well, while working as an employee, this might be my last one. I plan to remain at Oldham County Homemaker.
Very good. Well, Lauren, I'm going to have to leave you. Thank you again very much. I really love these.
Well, thank you for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, Pat.
That was very good presentation, Lauren.
Thank you.
I
Yes,
enjoyed it. Learned a lot.
I did when I was doing the research. I didn't know really any of this to start with.
Bet so.
There's
No,
too much there. You might as well turn our camera.
you're going to be missed when you.
I'll miss all of you all. This has been the best place to work.
I bet.
Good to know. Mhm. Well, you won't be leaving for a little while though.
Right. Still got a few more weeks at least.
Good.
I have never been to Udall,